Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to thank the committee that has organized this conference because I've been terribly gratified by the fact that I was invited and I've been able to contribute some of my knowledge, but also to get to know some of the movers and the shakers in this group, and to also see that things are happening, not just in America, in La Laguna, or somewhere else, but that things are happening here, and that's important. When you see people sparked up to the whole idea of really centering and focusing on the issues that are pertinent, and not just to immigrant children, but to all children, then you know that in fact, people are thinking and they're moving their heads together, and that's what counts. So what I'd like to do today, as way of introduction, I'd like to basically start off with one concern that I have. In all of the discussions about civil society and education, one of the things that we're assuming is that we have a very clear understanding of who is a citizen. But it's interesting that the word citizen and citizenship, while it is pervasive throughout the world, the way that it's being used in Europe, attached to a nation-state categorization, and now shifting to the individual, means that now we can even refer to such a thing as active citizenship, as though there is something about passive citizenship that exists out there. That kind of dilemma presents us with a problem of who is the real citizen? And it seems to me that the answers here are not to be found in the macro analysis or statistical analysis, but by going into civil society. And it is in the civil society that we begin to understand that the notion of citizenship is grounded very much in the sense of community that one has. And so therefore, while the society at large may enculturate members into citizenry through its education, it is really at the grassroots level that we begin to see some of the human agency and actors who profoundly mark us in what we are. Just take, for example, parents at schools. Parents in many places come only to the door of the school and do not enter the schools. But the kinds of parents that I have seen in my work with the Cosmicus Stichting have been parents who are there on the weekends, who are parents who sign contracts for the education of their children, who are parents who put together the money for education. These are parents that want engagement. And I refer to Ferguson's idea that there are 5 levels of engagement that we need to understand, one of which is social engagement, that is with community members, another which is the cultural engagement of knowing our cultural roots but also being cross-cultural about them, one which is important and is often left out and often is used to target youth in schools, and that is emotional engagement, understanding what is it that emotes for them, that motivates them to be in school. Then there is academic engagement, which we measure and test out. And finally, political engagement, which means we look at rights, human rights, our right to speak, our right to be. And it is just starting with families and parents that one sense of the civic community can be understood. The second one is that of the role of business people, entrepreneurs, the private sector. What are they doing in order to really engage the young students or youth who are coming out of schools for meaningful jobs and careers, not simply jobs that end after 2 or 3 years, but careers that can grow and can develop them as professionals. And then there's the third part of civil society, which is very important. And for this, I will use a concept that has been made by one Latino in the United States, Luis Moll. He says that in all communities, there's an intersection between the home and the community, which is called the funds of knowledge that community people have. In other words, children on the streets in their community have knowledge that often doesn't get replicated or understood in schools. And it is that kind of knowledge that is very worthwhile to explore. So given all of this, my question is, what answers can the civil community, civil society give us that provides us with some continuity, as John Ogbu would say, between the home values and those of the schools, and that reinforce the dynamics of dialogue? And for that, then, we have some presenters today, which I would like to introduce collectively, and then singularly ask them to go to the board so that they can deliver within a 20-minute period their responses to what answers they bring to us today, and how we can capture the essence of what we need to do in order to change around the trajectories of youth who become stagnated. So the first person I'd like to introduce on my left is Professor Edith Nikais from the University of Leuven, the Catholic University. He is the head of education and lifelong learning at the Research Institute for Work and Society, and his specializations cross over between sociology, politics, the relationship of labor market to social inclusion, and his work has capitalized on the issues of lifelong learning and education, particularly for excluded groups at a national level, at a European level, and at an international level. And as I understand today, you will be talking about the access to education, family, school, and teachers, and giving the special case of the Lucerne schools. All right. The second person that will be speaking today also is Dr. Jana Utova from the Open Society Institute, where she has actually been specializing for over 20 years in the educational political development, policy development, with particular attention to the issues of equity, diversity, social justice, migration, and integration. And I have personally read 2 of her publications, which I use in almost anything that I'm writing now, because I find them to be not only at the cutting edge, but also excellent references to what is going on in Europe. She has worked for the Open Society Institute. She has also been a consultant to OECD and the EU, and her focus on the Roma and the education of migrant children is one of the aspects that she'll be addressing today. Her presentation is entitled Integration and Diversity in Europe, Bringing Local Voices to Policymakers. The third person that I'm also very pleased to introduce is Mr. Mitsu Kanemaki from the Vericom project for the Junge for Builder. I hope I pronounced it right. Yeah, Hilhood. Okay, good. And what I'm interested in his work is because he has specialized in the area of mentoring, student mentors as examples, as actually exemplars for young students and the society at large. And he has majored in Japanese studies and political science at the University of Hamburg, and has worked in international relations, but has been very much dedicated to youth programs. And I'm sure he will give us some of those delectable practices that have occurred in the Hip Hop for School program, and also in the other program that he is now the regional coordinator. So I welcome you. All right. Oh. The next presenter is Mr. Murat Alisi from Endpoint in Netherlands. And in 2005, he coordinated the secondary school guidance department at the Witte Stichting, the Witte Tulip Stichting in Amsterdam. And he is one of the founders of Endpoint. But as I read his resume, one of the things that stuck out, imagine stimulating youth to the point of getting so excited about science and mathematics that he was able to build the largest chemistry class on top of the Nemo Science Center in Amsterdam, and youth were able to attend. He is highly dedicated to working with youth, and he will be talking about some of the activities of the foundation, but also some of the energy that flows from working with youth. So welcome to all of you, and I would like to ask you then if the first person would go to the podium, and I'll keep the 20-minute time limit. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.